So as we start out in answering this question, we should acknowledge that there are a lot of biblical characters who are used by God and saved by God in spite of some really, really egregious and bad sins. In fact, a lot of the characters you read about in the Bible did some really horrible things. But some of them then are mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11 as great men and women of the faith in spite of the awful things that they did during their lives. Men like Samson, not a very nice guy, or Abram, who sinned spectacularly on multiple occasions, or even David, who was guilty of adultery and murder and lying and even more than that. And yet, these men are in heaven today because their salvation was not contingent upon their actions, but on the grace of God. This is the scandal of grace, right? Even and especially abominable people can be and are saved by God's grace. So there are many characters in the Bible who have sinned in just spectacular ways, but whom we can also have a good degree of assurance that they are in heaven as we speak. Others, we don't know. And we can't really tell by just the testimony of their lives, and the Bible never gives us a definitive answer. One that comes to mind immediately is a man like King Saul. He clearly believed in God. He believed that God was the true God. But all of his major failures in life came as a result of unbelief. And so is King Saul in heaven? I mean, even when he died, that was a product of unbelief as well. The way that he died. So is he in heaven? I don't know. Maybe. We just don't know. And the question for this video centers around Judas, and he would be another one that we don't know about. Now, you may be thinking to yourself that it's got to be obvious that Judas isn't in heaven. I mean, he sold Jesus out to his enemies and to his death, and that is certainly true. But I would say that even that sin is not beyond God's grace, because each one of us in some way, shape, or form has been Judas. We have sold Jesus out to the cross by our sin. We're the ones that put him there on that cross because of our sin. And so if God's grace can cover my sin, I think it's accurate to say that it can also cover Judas's sin. And again, that's why Jesus went to the cross anyway. It was to pay for sin. If I hadn't sinned, he wouldn't have to die, and yet I am saved through his cross. I believe then that even Judas could have been saved the same way. But was he? Was he actually saved? Some people believe that Judas very well could have been saved and is now in heaven because of what he did after he betrayed Jesus. Let me read to you from Matthew chapter 27, verses 3-5. It says that when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, I have sinned, betraying innocent blood. And they said, what is that to us? See to it yourself. And so he throws down the silver at their feet, and he goes out and he hangs himself in grief and guilt. So Judas has betrayed Jesus, and he feels guilty for it, as he obviously should. So he throws the money on the floor, goes out and kills himself. And the question here is whether or not Judas turned from that sin of betraying Jesus and trusted in God for his forgiveness. Which, of course, is the remedy for salvation, to turn from sin and to trust that God will forgive that sin and pay the penalty for that sin. Is that what Judas believed in his final moments? My guess is that he probably did not believe that. As the Bible says, Judas certainly felt guilty. Of course, who wouldn't feel guilty for doing something that he did? But feeling guilty for something that you've done is not the same thing as turning from that sin and trusting in God for forgiveness. And I can safely say that anyone who has kids knows what this is like. If you catch your kids doing something they shouldn't be doing and you punish them for it, the child is certainly going to feel bad. But why does he feel bad? In most cases, he feels bad that he got caught doing something he shouldn't have been doing. And so now he knows he's going to get punished for it. And so that's why he feels bad, rather than feeling bad because he's sinned. There's a very subtle but a very important difference between those two feelings of guilt. And so the question is, did Judas feel guilty because he got caught doing something wrong and that's why he felt bad? Or was he genuinely sorry for his sin? Did he turn from that sin and trust God to deal with it? Again, I think that Judas probably was not sorry for his sin, but rather he was feeling guilty because he realized the incredible magnitude of his sin, of what he did. And there's a couple reasons I think this. First, Judas, I think, tries to pay for his sin. He knows that he's done something awful, and he knows that he has to make it right, he's going to try to make it right. And the way that he tries to make it right is to kill himself, because he feels so guilty for what he's done that he tries to atone for it with his own life. But of course, his life is not enough to atone for his sin. But I think that's what he's doing there. That's why he commits suicide, is he wants to atone for that sin that he's committed. But that's not enough to atone for that sin. And there is evidence, I think, that Judas was never even a follower of Jesus in the first place. So you have, of course, all of Jesus' disciples. Presumably they are all following him genuinely and believed him. But we do have evidence from the Bible that Judas never made that leap. He never became an actual follower of Jesus. In fact, the Bible says that he was a thief. He stole money from the collection that the disciples took up. It says that everybody kind of knew that it was going on, and he was doing it anyway. So he didn't seem to be bearing the fruit of someone who is genuinely following Jesus in the first place. And then finally, in John 13, it explicitly says that Satan himself entered into Jesus. And I don't think that Satan can possess someone who is genuinely trusting in God and who belongs to God. So I don't think that Judas is in heaven, at least from what we know about him in the Bible. I suppose it could be that there is more information that we don't have that's not in the Bible, so we're not aware of it, in which case an argument might be made for Judas to be saved, but there's just no evidence that we know of that would give us confidence, I think, that his sin was forgiven and that he is in heaven. Now, that being said, again, I do believe that Judas could have been saved. That's just how amazing grace is. You can betray the Son of God, and you can still be saved by grace through faith. And that should tell us there is no sin that is too big or too bad to come back from. God's grace can cover any sin.